the Louie T Network.
In the lab room.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome. You are in the lab room. Of course, I'm your host, Luke. Thank you for joining me. Week number 5 in the National Football League. Big one in Big D. 4-1, or excuse me, 3-1. Dallas Cowboys taking on the 3-1 Houston Texans. Big football game. Both teams looking to improve to 4-1 on the season. And this is a battle for Texas. Let's face it. The Texans want to be able to have bragging rights over the Cowboys, and likewise for the Cowboys over the Texans. So this is a big one within the state of Texas, and it's a big one for both of these teams within their respective conferences and divisions. So look, both teams looking to stay atop their divisions. This is a big game. Let's talk about it. As you go into this game, two quarterbacks that, hey, if the running game is on, these quarterbacks, they can get it done. If the running game isn't and the game is hoisted up onto their shoulders, you can run into some issues. And so, bad interception in Cowboys territory by Ryan Fitzpatrick to Orlando Scandrick. And this was just a bad throw. And Cowboys are sitting in zone coverage. And Fitz sees his guy, Arian Foster, going up the sidelines. There's a miscommunication. I don't know whose fault it was, but Arian Foster continues up the sidelines. Fitzpatrick throws it as if he's supposed to break his route off. Orlando Scandrick is sitting there squatting on the route. He had no intentions of moving, sitting in zone coverage. He throws him the football, and he picks it off. So, again, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I say this all the time, he will give you 2 to 3 opportunities every game to pick him off. Here was an opportunity. Cowboys took advantage of it. And you take points off the scoreboard when you do that, when you're Ryan Fitzpatrick. You're on the road, good Cowboys football team. You can't afford to make those type of mistakes. Cowboys dodge an early bullet. Cowboys driving for points deep in Texans territory. And look, I've said this before. I'll say it again. DeMarco Murray has a first quarter complimentary fumble every week. Last week against the Saints was his first time not fumbling in a game, was his first time not fumbling in the first quarter in a game this season. So, look, you should be expecting this if you're a Cowboys fan. You know DeMarco is going to fumble. If I'm a Cowboys fan, I would say, hey, DeMarco, just get it out the way, man. Get out the way as early as possible so we can just move on from this. So I don't have to worry about you doing this later on in the game. Get your one complimentary fumble out of the way so we can move forward. And DeMarco said, all right, man, I'm going to do that right now. Appreciate you giving me the opportunity to lay it on the carpet so I can just get it out my system. You know I got to drop one. You know I got to lay one down. So just let me lay it down now. Take some points off the scoreboard while the Texans haven't scored. So it's irrelevant. And so Cowboys looking to get some points early in this game. DeMarco lays it on the carpet. Texans recover, and they avoid giving up points early in this game. So both teams making mistakes, taking points off the scoreboard, and the other teams. And this was deep penetration into Texans territory. We're talking inside the red zone. So this was a huge fumble, and the Texans are able to avoid giving up any points as we move on to the second quarter. Dwayne Harris coughs it up as he's on a punt return late in the second quarter, coughs the football up, and the Texans are able to recover. But Texans struggling offensively. I mean, they had only 80-something yards in the first half worth of yardage, and so they were struggling to move the football. Arian Foster was having an excellent game. We'll talk about him a little bit later on. But other than that, I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick might have had 30-something yards passing in the first half. He was struggling mightily. And so they go 3 and out after the fumble recovery. After the great field position, they can't do anything with it. They give it back to the Cowboys, and the Cowboys say, hey, we know what to do with it. They move it down the field, and Tony Romo finds Terrence Williams on what could have potentially been a touchdown, except Terrence Williams forgot to do the one most important thing, catch the football, man, catch the football. He didn't catch it. Cowboys have to settle for 3 points right before the half as they take a 3-0 lead. First points of the game for either team. Cowboys take the lead as we head to the halftime break. 3-0 Cowboys up. Arian Foster goes vintage on the Cowboys, man. I thought this dude was done. Not in the sense of, oh, he can't play football anymore. I'm talking about, I thought we had seen the last of the vintage Arian Foster, the one cut and go, explosive Arian Foster, the one that sticks his foot in the ground and leaves defenders in his wake. I thought that dude was done. I didn't think I'd ever see that Arian Foster again, but I stand corrected. As that man was on display, I saw the explosive, one cut and go, big, long, striding Arian Foster. He looked healthy in this game. I haven't seen healthy Arian Foster in a while. I mean, this is the most explosive I've seen Arian Foster since probably 2012. I mean, that's how good he looked in this game. And so he was shredding the Cowboys. And he took the Texans down the field with two explosive runs, one for 33, the other for 17, the latter being a touchdown run, getting the Texans in the end zone for their first points of the game at 7-3. So Texans getting on the scoreboard. They're doing a wonderful job of opening up holes, and Arian Foster doing an even better job of exploiting them and getting all the yardage that is there on these runs. Saw him stick his foot in the ground and leave one of those Cowboy defenders in his dust. And so it was beautiful to see Arian out there giving those boys work. And I think he ended up with 24 carries, a buck 50 something, maybe even a buck 60 something. So he was giving the Cowboys work in this game, and he looked good. He looked like the classic vintage Arian Foster that we've all come to know and love. 7-3, Texans take the lead, but it would be a short-lived lead for the Texans as Tony Romo finds Jason Witten for a huge gain over the middle of the field, which sets up a pirouette prayer by Tony Romo. Now, you can say what you want. I heard the media saying it was, a great play, this, that, and the other. Look, it was actually, and I think Tony Romo is his most dangerous when he escapes the pocket. I think a lot of people don't give Tony Romo enough credit for what he does to avoid sacks and make things happen outside of the pocket. Here was a situation where J.J. Watt beat Tyron Smith like he stole something. Just beat Tyron Smith, or Tyron Smith, excuse me, and just beat him. Right around the corner, straight speed, beat him off the line. Tony was under duress before he could even get to his back foot. And Tony does a great job of seeing guys out of the corner of his eye. He saw him like, uh-oh, here he comes. Spun on him. JJ couldn't get his grasp around him. Spins out of it, and then he just heaved it. I don't even think Tony set his feet. I don't think he knew exactly. He knew where he wanted to go with the football, but he just threw it up there. It was a desperation prayer heave. I don't want to sit here and act like Tony set his feet and threw a dart. Tony threw that one up for grab and said, hey, Terrence, it's one-on-one, man. Make a play for me. And so I can't knock the hustle. I cannot knock the hustle for Tony throwing it up there. Luckily enough for him, the defender falls down. Terrence Williams is able to come down with the football. It's a beautiful 43-yard hookup for the Cowboys into the end zone as they reassume the lead at 10-7. Great play all the way around by the Cowboys on that play. One to get away from J.J. Watt, who I thought didn't have as great an impact in this game as he had in recent games against other opponents this season. But nonetheless, great job by Tony to get away, throw it up, give Terrence Williams a chance to atone for the drop late in the first half. So it's 10-7, Cowboys back on top. End of the third quarter, we move on to the fourth quarter. And the Cowboys had a chance to pull away and put this game on ice. But again, when you don't rely on the running game, and I thought DeMarco Murray, he didn't struggle in this game, but he didn't have one of those DeMarco Murray games that we've seen over the first 4 games leading up to this game, where he's over 100 yards, into the third quarter. I mean, he had to work for his yardage. And this is a good Texans defense, so that was to be expected. He had to work for his yardage in this game. And so more of the onus and more of the burden was put on Tony Romo's shoulder. Here's what you get when you take the ball out of DeMarco Murray's hands and put it in the hands of Tony Romo. Kendrick Lewis with a huge red zone interception of Tony Romo. This is just a bad decision, a bad read, and an even worse throw by Tony Romo. And this does so many different things. It takes points off the board. Let's just say you get a field goal out of this. At the time, it's 10-7. It ends up being 13-7 if you get a field goal. And keep in mind, this game goes to overtime. A field goal could be the difference between you winning this game in regulation and you go into overtime, and you don't know what happens when you get into overtime. So let's say you get a field goal, you still win this game by 3. There's no regulate or overtime in this game. You get a 7 here, I think the Texans might be done. They've struggled to score all game long, and you're up 10 in the fourth quarter. I don't see the Texans running off 10 points after you've assumed a 10-point lead in this game for the first time. Neither team having been up by more than 3 points or well, I want to say 3 points in this game. No team had led by more than 3 points in this game, or 4 points. Texans had a 7-3 lead. So to go up by 10 at this point, that would have been huge. But Tony throws that interception, takes points off the board, gives the Texans some momentum, takes the momentum away from his squad. And so that was a huge play in the game at the time. But the Texans, like I said, struggling offensively, which is why points on the board right there would have been huge for the Cowboys. Struggling offensively, they punt the football. Now, they did flip the field position, however. They did pick up a couple of first downs and were able to punt the football, but Dwayne Harris is able to run off a 38-yard punt return. And this was huge because he needed to atone for his mistake earlier with the fumble. And so he is able to gash the Texans special teams unit for 38, set the Cowboys up in great field position, and then DeMarco Murray starts to get it lathered up and get it going, and they get all the way down to the 2-yard line. And this time, that patented Tony to Dez hook up on that back shoulder fade when you get close to the end zone, almost unstoppable, it is connected on as Tony Romo is able to hit Dez Bryant for that touchdown to get them back up by 10, which is what would have happened if Tony Romo probably doesn't throw that interception. So now it's 17-7. Dez is letting everybody know what's good. And if you're the Texans, this thing might be over. I mean, you're down 10. We're getting into the meat and potatoes of the fourth quarter. You haven't shown the ability to score on back-to-back possessions. I don't know if you can run off 10 straight to tie this game up. I don't know if you can do that. And so the Texans put together a lengthy drive. They drive it all the way down to the Dallas Cowboys 9-yard line. But in the process in doing it, they ate up 7 minutes of the clock. So now you're talking about giving, and they had to settle for a field goal, which is the worst part of that whole situation is you eat up clock, you get all the way down the field, and you got to settle for 3. But, well, you needed both anyway. You needed a field goal and a touchdown to tie the game up. So you got to get one. And so they take the field goal. But now there's less than 3 minutes left in the game. You still got all 3 of your timeouts if you're the Texans. So that's a good thing. But now you got to get a stop. You can't give up one first down. You give up one first down, this game's over. So you got to go out. You got to get a stop. And the Texans are able to do that. And they were able to do that because the Cowboys were in a very generous mood at the time. 2 costly penalties. They felt like helping out the Texans. Hey, we don't want this game to be. It was almost like a Buffalo Wild Wings moment where somebody pressed the button and the Cowboys said, all right, we're going to give you a delay of game penalty to start the drive off, and we'll get an intentional grounding just for good measure to make sure you get great field position as we give you back the football. And that's exactly what happened. Texans get great field position, nice solid return, and they end up at the 45-yard line of the Cowboys. 4 plays, 45 yards later, the Texans are in the end zone on a 1-yard Arian Foster run. We knotted up at 17. And the Cowboys, I thought this was going to overtime. They concede nothing to the Cowboys. And the Texans were playing soft. I didn't like the coverage late in this game. These little dump-offs to DeMarco Murray, and you weren't tackling well. 2 instances where you, even though the Cowboys had all 3 of their timeouts, make them use them. Don't allow them to have their timeouts. They let DeMarco Murray run out of bounds. He was getting huge chunks and getting out of bounds. The soft coverage, they wouldn't give up anything deep. I understand that, but you got to tackle. You got to rally to the football. They did a poor job of both. Cowboys end up getting as close as the 35-yard line, which is, to me, that's money for Dan Bailey. The man hadn't missed in 30 kicks, so I'm thinking, game's over. Go ahead, pack your cars up, get ready to drive home safely. This game is over. But Dan, I don't know what happened. Dan succumbed to the pressure or something because Dan Bailey missed from 53 yards. I was stunned. I said, what? We're going to overtime. And the Texans win the toss, and Arian Foster busts off a nice little run. I'm like, uh-oh, they could be in trouble. But the Cowboys defense settled in. Ryan Fitzpatrick panicked on 3rd down, made a poor decision, incomplete. They got to punt the football. And Dallas was able to work their way down the field, down the field, down the field. And then they got right into a range where Tony Romo could throw up a desperation heave to Dez Bryant. And here's Tony Romo again, pressure in his face. This was an Eli Manning special right here. One of those no look, I'm going to just throw it up. I got one-on-one. And look, I don't have a problem with Tony just heaving it up in one-on-one because you got two dudes on the outsides and Terrence Williams and Dez Bryant who can both leap, who both are extremely tall and physical receivers. I don't have a problem with you giving them chances to win jump balls. So in this situation, one-on-one coverage for Dez, I'm all for it. He threw it up. Dez Bryant makes a GMG, a grown man grab over Jonathan Joseph. Jonathan Joseph, he played it pretty well. I mean, he could have played it a little bit better. I don't want to say he couldn't have played it any better because he could have actually looked for the football, which he didn't. But his face guard was actually a pretty good face guard as he got there with the ball, actually knocked it out of Dez Bryant's hands, and he regathered the football, Dez Bryant. I mean, what else can you say? The man is a monster, is Dez. And so that pretty much put the Cowboys right in Dan Bailey's wheelhouse. They picked up a couple more yards just for good measure. Remember, Dan missed from 53, so they were right around 53-yard field goal range. They got a couple more yards, made it a little closer at 49, and Dan comes in and knocks home the game winner in overtime as the Dallas Cowboys survive the Houston Texans at home 20-17. Cowboys go to 4-1 on the season. Big win for them as the Cowboys continue to play really good football. That was a huge win for the Cowboys because now they got to go on the road to Seattle next week, and that's a house of horrors for the Cowboys. The last couple of times they've been there, it's been nothing but bad memories for this Cowboys football team. So they're looking to exercise some demons out in Seattle next week. Meanwhile, for the Houston Texans, that was a tough one. That was a tough one to drop because now you're tied with the Indianapolis Colts, who you see on Thursday Night Football at 3-2. So both of you guys jockeying for position in this division. This is one you could have stolen and been up. Now you're tied with this Indianapolis Colts team, and it's a short week. So now you got to turn around, game plan for them. That's going to be a really fun matchup to take a look at. So big game for the Cowboys. Way to get that win. Huge win. Texans, you let one slip away. But, hey, hats off to the Cowboys for getting it done. They got it done. They made the plays when they were there to be made, and Texans just fall short. So that's going to do it for the review of the Texans and Cowboys. I thank you for joining me. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I've got plenty more games to break down in week number 5 in the National Football League. See you in a bit. Like the content? Want more? Sub up.